I used to believe my Grandma Aurora was an open book, its pages filled with the simple poetry of a life well lived. Her days were a predictable rhythm of tending her rose garden, baking apple pies that perfumed the entire house, and knitting afghans in every shade imaginable. She had eyes the color of a summer sky after a gentle rain, and a smile that could melt the frost off the most hardened heart. To me, she was the embodiment of warmth, a safe harbor in the often turbulent sea of childhood. I remember, as a little girl, spending countless afternoons nestled beside her on the old floral sofa in her sun-drenched living room. She would tell me stories of her own childhood, tales of mischievous adventures in the countryside, of secret hideaways in whispering willow trees, and of a simpler time when life moved at a slower, more deliberate pace. She never spoke of hardship or sorrow, only of joy and resilience. And I, in my innocent naivete, believed that her life had been exactly as she painted it, a canvas of gentle hues and tranquil scenes. Grandma Aurora always had a way of making you feel utterly and completely seen. She listened with a patience that seemed boundless, her blue eyes fixed on yours, absorbing every word, every nuance, every fleeting emotion. She never judged, never criticized, only offered unwavering support and unconditional love. She was the kind of person who could make you feel like you were the most important person in the world, simply by the way she looked at you. Even after I grew up, moved away, and started a family of my own, I made it a point to visit her as often as I could. Those visits were my lifeline, a chance to reconnect with the woman who had shaped me into the person I was. We would sit for hours sipping tea, sharing stories, and simply enjoying each other's company. And of course, there was always the apple pie, its warm cinnamon-scented aroma, a constant reminder of home. It's funny, isn't it, how we often take for granted the people who are closest to us. We assume that we know everything there is to know about them, that their lives are an open book for us to read at will. But the truth is, everyone has secrets, hidden depths that remain concealed beneath the surface. And sometimes, it's only after they're gone that we begin to truly understand the complexities of their lives. Grandma Aurora passed away peacefully in her sleep, at the ripe old age of 92. It was a loss that reverberated through my entire being, leaving a void that I knew would never truly be filled. The house felt empty without her laughter, without the scent of her baking, without the warmth of her presence. It was as if a light had gone out, leaving the world a little dimmer, a little colder. After the funeral, as we were sorting through her belongings, dividing them amongst the family, I found myself drawn to the attic. It was a dusty, cluttered space, filled with forgotten treasures and remnants of a lifelong past. Sunlight streamed through the small, grimy window, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood, dried flowers, and something else, something indefinable, something that hinted at secrets long buried. I began to rummage through the old boxes and trunks, each one filled with memories waiting to be rediscovered. There were old photographs, faded and cracked, depicting faces I barely recognized. There were letters tied together with faded ribbons, their ink blurred and smudged with time. There were trinkets and mementos, each one a tangible reminder of a life lived fully and deeply. And then in the corner of the attic, tucked away inside an old wooden box, I found it. It was a diary. Small, bound in worn leather, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. The leather was soft and supple to the touch, worn smooth by years of handling. The clasp was broken, the metal tarnished and green with oxidation. As I lifted it from the box, a faint scent of lavender and old paper wafted up to my nostrils, a scent that instantly transported me back to Grandma Aurora's living room, to those long, lazy afternoons spent nestled beside her on the floral sofa. My heart began to pound in my chest. I knew instinctively that this diary held something important, something that would change everything I thought I knew about my grandmother. It felt heavy in my hands, laden with secrets and unspoken truths. With trembling fingers, I opened the diary. The first page was dated July 12, 1941. The handwriting was elegant and flowing, the ink a deep, rich sepia. The words were written in English, but there were also passages in a language I didn't recognize, a language that sounded both beautiful and melancholic. As I began to read, I felt a sense of shock and disbelief wash over me. The words on the page painted a picture of a woman I barely recognized. A woman who was brave, resourceful, and fiercely independent. A woman who had lived through unimaginable hardship and loss. A woman who had loved with a passion that burned brighter than any star. The diary revealed a life filled with forbidden love, wartime sacrifice, and a legacy that echoed across generations. It spoke of a clandestine affair with a man who was not her husband, a man who was fighting for his country in a war-torn land. It spoke of the agonizing decision she had to make to protect her family, a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. And it spoke of a secret that she had guarded for decades, a secret that had the power to shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. I sat there in the dusty attic surrounded by the ghosts of the past, reading my grandmother's words, and I felt as if I were being transported back in time, to a world of danger, intrigue, and unwavering love. It was a world that I never knew existed, a world that had been hidden from me all my life. The discovery of the diary was a turning point, a moment that irrevocably changed my perception of Grandma Aurora. She was no longer just the kind, gentle woman who baked apple pies and knitted afghans. She was a woman of immense strength, courage, and resilience. A woman who had lived a life far more complex and secretive than anyone had ever imagined. I realized then that I had only scratched the surface of her story. There were so many questions I wanted to ask, so many things I wanted to know. But it was too late. She was gone, and all that remained was this diary, a fragile window into her hidden past. This diary is more than just a collection of words on a page. It's a testament to the enduring power of love, the sacrifices we make for those we care about, and the legacies that we leave behind. It's a story that needs to be told, a story that deserves to be heard. And I, her granddaughter, am the one who will tell it. If you'd like to walk this path with me, to uncover the secrets hidden within Grandma Aurora's diary, to delve into a world of love, loss, and unwavering resilience, then subscribe and stay close. Because this is just the beginning. And the story that awaits us is more extraordinary than you could ever imagine. The scent of lavender always takes me back. Not just to the sachets Mama kept tucked in the linen closet, but to Willow Creek itself. It clung to the air there, a fragrant veil draped over everything. Lavender and sun-baked earth, the sweet tang of apples from the orchard down the road, and the faint ever-present perfume of honeysuckle climbing the porch posts. Willow Creek in the late 1930s. It wasn't a place you'd find on any map of consequence. Nestled in a valley carved by the slow, patient hand of the Blue Ridge Mountains, it was a pocket of peace, seemingly untouched by the world's growing unease. We lived a rhythm dictated by the seasons, by the rising and setting of the sun, by the needs of the land. Our farm was small, just enough to sustain us. Papa, with his weathered hands and quiet strength, coaxed life from the soil. Mama, her apron always dusted with flour, kept the heart of the home beating strong. Thomas, my older brother, dreamed of flying higher than the hawks that circled above our fields. And Lily, my little sister, saw poetry in every wildflower, every shimmering raindrop. And me? Aurora. I was the quiet observer, the one who soaked it all in. I loved the feel of the earth between my toes, the way the wind whispered secrets through the wheat fields. I spent hours lost in the branches of the old oak tree at the edge of the pasture, a book in my lap, the rustling leaves my only company. Stories transported me. They showed me worlds beyond Willow Creek, worlds I longed to see, even as I cherished the one I knew. Our days unfolded in a familiar pattern. Up before dawn, the roosters crow a jarring but welcome call. Chores first, milking the cows, feeding the chickens, gathering eggs still warm from the nest. Then breakfast, a hearty affair of Mama's biscuits, fried ham, and thick sweet cream. Papa would read from the Bible, his voice low and comforting, before we all headed out to our respective tasks. Thomas would be in the barn, tinkering with his makeshift airplane models. He'd collect scraps of metal and wood, fueled by a dream he kept locked close to his heart. He yearned to join the Air Corps, to soar through the sky like the eagles he admired. Mama worried, of course. It was a mother's right. But Papa, he understood. He saw that fire in Thomas's eyes, that unquenchable thirst for something more. Lily, with her head full of rhymes and her pockets full of pebbles, would wander through the fields, composing poems in her head. She spoke to the flowers, to the birds, to the very air around her. She saw beauty where others saw only weeds. Sometimes I'd follow her, listening to her whisper her verses, marveling at the way she could capture the essence of a moment in just a few carefully chosen words. My own days were a mix of helping Mama in the house and escaping to my oak tree. I'd weed the garden, knead the dough for bread, mend clothes, the practical skills a girl needed to learn. But my mind was always elsewhere, dreaming of distant lands, of adventures waiting to be had. I devoured books, losing myself in tales of explorers and artists, of courageous women who defied expectations. Evenings were a time for togetherness. After supper, we'd gather on the porch, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. Papa would tell stories of his own childhood, of the hardships he faced and the lessons he learned. Mama would hum softly, her fingers busy with her knitting. Thomas would point out constellations in the night sky, naming them with a reverence that always struck me. And Lily, curled up at Mama's feet, would recite her poems, her voice clear and sweet. Sometimes Mama would bring out her old photo album. We'd pore over the faded images, piecing together stories of ancestors we'd never known. There was a picture of my grandmother, her face etched with a quiet strength, holding a baby in her arms. Mama said she was a pioneer, a woman who had crossed the country in a covered wagon. I'd stare at that picture, wondering if I had inherited her spirit, her courage. Sundays were special. We'd dress in our best clothes and walk to the little white church at the edge of town. The service was simple but heartfelt. The hymns filled the air with a sense of hope and community. Afterward, we'd gather with our neighbors, sharing food and laughter, catching up on the week's events. I remember one Sunday in particular. The air was crisp and clear, the leaves on the trees ablaze with color. As we walked home, I noticed a group of children playing in a field. They were chasing after a kite, their laughter echoing through the air. I stopped for a moment watching them, a strange feeling tugging at my heart. It wasn't sadness exactly, more like a yearning, a longing for something I couldn't quite name. I wanted to run with them, to feel the wind in my hair, to lose myself in the simple joy of the moment. But I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, held back by an invisible force. I knew even then that Willow Creek wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. That feeling, that quiet restlessness, it never really left me. It was a constant undercurrent, a subtle hum beneath the surface of my life. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself that I was content with my lot. But the world outside Willow Creek kept calling to me, whispering promises of adventure and discovery. I saw it in the newspapers Papa brought home, filled with stories of faraway lands and momentous events. I heard it on the radio, in the voices of reporters broadcasting from distant cities. And I felt it in the books I read, in the tales of brave souls who dared to venture beyond the familiar. Evenings, lying in bed, I would stare out the window at the stars, imagining myself traveling to each one. I dream of bustling cities, of towering mountains, of vast oceans. I dream of a life filled with purpose, with meaning, with something more. Thomas understood. He saw that same yearning in my eyes, that same desire to break free. We'd talk for hours, sharing our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. He was my confidant, my closest friend. He knew that I wasn't meant to stay in Willow Creek forever. He knew that I had a different path to follow. But Mama didn't understand. She wanted me to be happy, of course. But she believed that happiness lay in contentment, in stability, in the familiar comforts of home. She couldn't fathom why I would want to leave Willow Creek, why I would want to abandon the life she had built for me. "Aurora," she'd say, her voice filled with concern, "what more could you possibly want? We have everything we need right here." And I would try to explain, to tell her about the dreams that filled my head, the adventures that beckoned. But my words always seemed to fall short. I couldn't articulate the longing that burned within me. So I stayed silent. I smiled and nodded and pretended to be content. But inside, the yearning grew stronger, more insistent. It was a seed planted deep within my soul, waiting for the right moment to sprout. Little did I know, that moment was closer than I imagined. The world outside Willow Creek was about to come crashing in, shattering the peace and tranquility we had always known. The storm clouds were gathering on the horizon, and soon, our little valley would be swept up in the winds of change. And my own life, my own story would take a turn I could never have foreseen. The empty chair at the table, the one Grandma kept setting a place for, wasn't for someone lost to grief. It was waiting for the storm. The scent of wood smoke and lilac still clung to the air in Willow Creek, a comforting blanket woven from generations of familiar routines. But even the most comforting blankets can't entirely shut out a growing chill. We started hearing it first on the radio, crackling through the static, voices speaking of faraway lands with names that sounded like thunder rolling across the plains. Poland, France, Britain. Names that meant nothing and yet somehow everything. My father, Thomas, he'd listen with a furrowed brow, his hand absently stroking his chin. He saw opportunity in it all, a chance to prove himself, to build something bigger than the farm, something important. He talked of joining up, of flying planes, his eyes alight with a reckless fire that worried my mother, something fierce. She'd clutch his arm, her voice tight with fear, reminding him of his responsibilities, of the children, of the land that needed tending. The farm, she said, was our war effort. Feeding the nation. Keeping the home fires burning. Grandma, God rest her soul, just kept feeding that empty chair. Day in, day out. Breakfast, lunch, supper. A full plate set before the vacant space, as if Grandpa was still there, just gone to check on the north pasture or mend a fence. We'd try to gently take the plate away, offer her something else, but she'd just stare at us with those vacant blue eyes, a stubborn set to her jaw. He's hungry, she'd say, her voice a mere whisper. He always comes back. We thought it was grief, plain and simple. The kind that eats away at you, leaving you hollow and lost. We were wrong. The whisper spread like wildfire, too. At the general store, Mrs. Abernathy would lean across the counter, her voice hushed, talking about her nephew shipped off to Europe. Letters arrived, thin and blue, filled with censored news and carefully worded reassurances. The world, once a distant map on a classroom wall, began to feel close, too close. Like a storm gathering on the horizon, its shadow creeping across our sun-drenched fields. I felt it too, a shift in the air, a tightening in my chest. The carefree days of skipping stones on the creek, of dreaming of handsome suitors and grand adventures, suddenly felt foolish. The world was burning, and I was still worried about which dress to wear to the town social? Felt wrong somehow. A betrayal of something I couldn't quite name. My daydreams became darker, tinged with anxiety. I imagined soldiers marching through Willow Creek, the church bells ringing a mournful dirge. I saw faces in the clouds, gaunt and weary, pleading for help. The safety I'd always known, the unwavering certainty of tomorrow, began to crumble like dry earth. Then Elias arrived. He wasn't from around here. That was clear from the moment he stepped off the bus, his worn duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He wore a uniform, but it wasn't the crisp, starched kind you saw on recruitment posters. It was faded, softened by wear, the buttons tarnished. He moved with a quiet grace, a contained energy that set him apart from the lanky farm boys who congregated at the soda fountain. His eyes, they were the color of a stormy sea, deep and knowing, holding secrets I couldn't even begin to imagine. They were old eyes in a young man's face. They held a weariness that mirrored the fear that had begun to gnaw at my own heart. I saw him first at the market, helping Mrs. Olson carry a heavy sack of potatoes. He moved with an economy of motion, his muscles flexing beneath his worn shirt. He didn't smile, but there was a gentleness in the way he spoke to her. A quiet respect that was rare in those days, especially from a young man to an older woman. He caught my eye just for a fleeting moment. A spark like static electricity jumped between us. He didn't grin or wink, just a slow, deliberate look that seemed to pierce through my carefully constructed facade. I blushed, embarrassed by the intensity of his gaze, and quickly looked away. But I couldn't forget him. He took a room at the boarding house run by old Mrs. Hawthorne, the one with the perpetually sour expression and the prize-winning roses. He kept to himself mostly. He'd take long walks in the woods, his head bent, as if searching for something lost. Sometimes I'd see him sitting on the porch, whittling small figures from pieces of wood, his brow furrowed in concentration. The local boys eyed him with suspicion. He wasn't one of them. He didn't boast about hunting or farming or chasing girls. He was an enigma, a silent stranger in a town that thrived on gossip and familiarity. I found myself drawn to him, a moth to a flickering flame. I'd find excuses to walk past the boarding house, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. I'd linger at the market, pretending to browse the produce just to be near him. One afternoon, I was sketching in my notebook by the creek, trying to capture the way the sunlight dappled through the leaves. I was so absorbed in my work that I didn't hear him approach. "That's beautiful," he said, his voice low and gravelly like stones tumbling in a stream. I jumped, startled, and dropped my pencil. He bent to pick it up, his fingers brushing against mine. The contact sent a jolt through me, a strange mixture of fear and excitement. "Thank you," I stammered, my cheeks burning. He handed me the pencil, his eyes lingering on my face. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked, gesturing to the sketch. "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "Just practice, I guess." He smiled then, a small fleeting smile that transformed his face. "Everything has a purpose," he said. "Even a drawing." He sat down beside me on the bank and we talked. Not about the war, not about politics, not about anything important, really. We talked about the creek, about the trees, about the way the light changed throughout the day. He told me his name was Elias and that he was just passing through. But I knew deep down that he was more than that. There was a weight in his eyes, a sadness that hinted at a past he couldn't escape. He carried secrets, I could feel it. Secrets that were tied to the growing darkness that was engulfing the world. As the days turned into weeks, Elias and I spent more and more time together. We walked in the woods, we talked by the creek. We shared quiet moments of companionship that felt both innocent and forbidden. I felt a pull towards him, a magnetic force that I couldn't resist. He was different from any boy I had ever known. He saw something in me that no one else had ever seen. A yearning for something more. A restlessness that mirrored his own. But there were shadows too. Whispers in the night. Hushed conversations I couldn't quite decipher. He'd disappear for days at a time, returning with a haunted look in his eyes. He never spoke about his past, or his reasons for being in Willow Creek. He was a mystery wrapped in an enigma, shrouded in secrets. I knew with a growing certainty that his presence in Willow Creek wasn't accidental. He was here for a reason that would soon entwine my life with danger, romance, and choices no one my age should ever have to make. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Elias took my hand. His touch was warm, calloused, and strangely comforting. "Aurora," he said, his voice low and serious, "there are things you need to know. Things that are happening in this world that are bigger than you. Bigger than me, bigger than Willow Creek." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "I can't tell you everything," he said. "Not yet. But I need you to trust me. I need you to believe in me." I looked into his eyes and I saw the truth. He was in danger. And somehow I was too. Grandma kept feeding the empty chair. And I knew with a chilling certainty that she wasn't just grieving Grandpa. She was waiting for someone else. Someone who wasn't coming back. Someone who was lost in the storm that was brewing on the horizon. The world was changing. And so was I. The innocence of Willow Creek was fading, replaced by a growing awareness of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. And I knew with a heavy heart that my life would never be the same. The war had come to Willow Creek. Not with bombs or bullets, but with a whisper, a shadow, and a young man with stormy eyes and a duffel bag full of secrets. And my life as I knew it was about to begin. The aroma of lavender still clung to the air from the sachet I'd tucked into my diary, a small comfort against the anxieties that were now my constant companions. Elias and I met in secret, always under the cloak of twilight. The old boathouse down by the creek became our sanctuary, a place where the world outside, with its gathering darkness, seemed momentarily muted. He'd arrive, his face etched with worry, but his eyes always held a flicker of hope when he saw me. We didn't speak much at first, simply held each other. His touch was gentle, reassuring, a silent promise in a world that felt like it was fracturing. It was a fragile connection, born in fear and uncertainty, but it was real, and it was ours. He'd tell me small things about his day, the suspicious glances he received at the mill, the hushed conversations he overheard in town. I, in turn, would recount the increasingly odd behavior of some newcomers, men with hard eyes and clipped German accents, who seemed to be everywhere, watching, listening. One evening, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the coming rain, Elias finally told me his secret. He wasn't just a German immigrant seeking refuge. He was a scientist, a physicist who had deserted his post when he realized the true nature of the work being done, the destructive potential of the weapons they were developing. His voice was low, filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. He spoke of a device, an encryption machine of unimaginable power, something the Nazis desperately wanted. His mission, he confessed, was to find it, to secure it before it fell into their hands. "It's hidden somewhere," he said, his hand closing over mine. "My mentor, a brilliant clockmaker before the war, he entrusted me with clues. He knew what was coming. He hid it, and he left me the key to finding it. He showed me the intricate drawings, diagrams filled with symbols and numbers that meant nothing to me, but were clearly a language he understood. He explained how his mentor had believed in the power of knowledge, but also in the responsibility that came with it. This device, he said, could alter the course of the war, perhaps even prevent it from escalating further. The weight of his words settled upon me, heavy and suffocating. I looked at him, at the desperation in his eyes, the unwavering commitment to his mission. It was then I realized that this wasn't just about him, or about Germany. It was about the world, about the future, about everything I held dear. The following days were filled with a growing sense of unease. The strangers in Willow Creek became bolder, more visible. They frequented the diner, lingering over their coffee, their eyes scanning the room. They asked questions, seemingly innocuous at first, but always probing, searching. The atmosphere in town shifted, a palpable tension that hung in the air like a gathering storm. Even Mama noticed, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced with a quiet apprehension. It was in my diary late one night that I poured out my fears. The words flowed from my pen, a torrent of anxieties and doubts. I wrote about Elias, about the growing tenderness I felt for him, the way his presence brought a sliver of light into the darkness. But I also wrote about my fear, the fear of what his mission meant, the danger it brought to our doorstep. Could I risk everything, my family, my home, for a man I barely knew? The answer came to me slowly, not as a sudden revelation, but as a quiet understanding that bloomed within me. It wasn't just about Elias or about the war. It was about what was right, about standing up for what I believed in, even if it meant facing unimaginable danger. It was about honoring the legacy of courage and resilience that had been passed down through generations of women in my family. With renewed determination, I helped Elias decipher the clues left by his mentor. We spent hours poring over the diagrams, tracing the symbols, trying to unlock the secrets they held. One evening, as the rain beat against the windows of the boathouse, Elias suddenly exclaimed, "The clock!" He always talked about the clock. He explained that his mentor had been the caretaker of the old clock in the church tower. He had often spoken of its intricate workings, its hidden mechanisms. Could it be that the clues were hidden there within the clock itself? We waited until the dead of night, when the town was shrouded in darkness, before venturing to the church. The air was thick with the scent of rain and damp stone. The only sound was the rhythmic ticking of the clock, a steady pulse in the silent night. Inside, the church was eerily silent. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight that streamed through the stained glass windows. We made our way to the clock tower, our footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. Elias examined the clock, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings, his eyes searching for a hidden mechanism. Finally, with a soft click, a panel slid open, revealing a small compartment. Inside, nestled in a bed of velvet, was a key, an ancient-looking key with intricate carvings. "The labyrinth," Elias whispered, his voice filled with awe. He hid the device in the labyrinth beneath the church. He explained that beneath the church lay a network of tunnels, a labyrinth built centuries ago by the first settlers of Willow Creek. It was said to be filled with traps and hidden passages, a place where secrets were buried deep. The key unlocked a hidden door in the church crypt, leading down into the darkness. We descended, our hearts pounding in our chests, the only light coming from the small lantern Elias carried. The air grew cold and damp, the scent of mildew and decay filling our nostrils. The labyrinth was a maze of twisting tunnels and dead ends, a disorienting and unsettling place. We followed the clues, deciphering the symbols etched into the walls, navigating the treacherous passages. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, a sense of being watched, of being followed. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on me, the secrets and sorrows of generations past. Then we heard it. A faint sound, a shuffling, a whisper in the darkness. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests. We weren't alone. Elias extinguished the lantern, plunging us into complete darkness. We pressed ourselves against the cold, damp wall, listening, waiting. The sound came again, closer this time, a distinct rustling. The sound of someone moving through the tunnels. They were here. They had followed us. My hand instinctively went to the small pistol Papa had given me, hidden beneath my coat. I had never fired a gun in my life, but I knew I would do whatever it took to protect Elias, to protect the future, to protect the fragile hope that had blossomed in the darkness. In my diary that night, my hand trembling as I wrote, I realized that I was no longer just an observer, a passive bystander in the unfolding drama. I was a player, an active participant in a dangerous game, and I was ready to fight. For Elias, for my family, for the future of Willow Creek, for the world itself. The grandmother I would become was being forged in the fires of this moment. A woman tempered by fear and love. A woman ready to face whatever lay ahead. The last tumblers clicked. A sound swallowed by the oppressive silence of the chamber. Elias pushed the heavy iron door inward, and a gust of stale, earthy air rushed out, carrying the scent of damp stone and forgotten things. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. We held our breaths, stepping into the darkness, Elias's lantern cutting a swathe through the gloom. Dust motes danced in the beam, illuminating walls lined with forgotten shelves. Some collapsed under the weight of time and decay. The air hung thick with the weight of history, of secrets buried deep beneath the bones of the old church. This was it. After all the clues, all the riddles, all the near misses, we were here. The chamber was larger than I'd imagined, almost cavernous. In the center, resting on a stone pedestal, bathed in a single shaft of moonlight filtering through a crack in the ceiling, sat a small ornate box. It was crafted from a dark, unfamiliar metal, inlaid with intricate silver filigree that seemed to writhe and shift in the flickering lamplight. There, Elias breathed, his voice a hushed reverence. The cranarium. We moved towards it, drawn by an invisible force. The air crackled with a strange energy, a hum that resonated deep within my bones. As Elias reached for the box, a low, grinding sound echoed from the far end of the chamber. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage. "Damn it," Elias muttered, his hand freezing inches from the cranarium. "They're here." He grabbed my hand, pulling me behind a crumbling pillar. The passage widened and figures emerged, silhouetted against the dim light. Nazi soldiers, their faces grim and determined, their weapons glinting in the darkness. They moved with a practiced efficiency, their boots echoing on the stone floor. "We know you're in here," one of them shouted, his voice harsh and guttural. "Come out now, and you might live." Elias squeezed my hand tighter. "We have to get out of here, Aurora. Now." He pulled me towards the back of the chamber, towards a section of wall covered in faded tapestries. He remembered something from his mentor's notes, a hidden mechanism disguised as a religious icon. His fingers flew across the fabric, searching for the pressure point, the secret latch. The soldiers were closing in, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating our hiding place. I could hear their heavy breathing, the click of their rifles being cocked. The air was thick with fear, with the metallic tang of impending violence. "Here," Elias hissed, pressing on a small, tarnished crucifix. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing another passage, even narrower and more treacherous than the first. We scrambled through, Elias pushing me ahead, his hand never leaving mine. The passage twisted and turned, a labyrinth of blind corners and dead ends. I relied on my memory, on the faint impressions of the church's layout that I had absorbed over the years. I knew the general direction we needed to go, the path that led to the old crypt beneath the altar. The soldiers were right behind us, their shouts echoing through the narrow passage. We could hear their heavy footsteps, the scrape of their boots against the stone. They were gaining on us. Suddenly, Elias stopped, pulling me behind a large, crumbling sarcophagus. He pressed his finger to his lips, signaling for silence. I held my breath, listening intently. The soldiers rushed past, their voices fading into the distance. We had lost them for now. "This way," I whispered, leading Elias through a narrow opening in the back of the sarcophagus. It led to a small hidden chamber, barely large enough for the two of us. We huddled together, catching our breath. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. I could feel Elias's heart pounding against my back. We can't stay here, he said, his voice barely a whisper. They'll find us eventually. He was right. We had to keep moving. But where could we go? The church was surrounded. Every exit was likely guarded. Then I remembered something. A hidden passage beneath the altar. A secret escape route used by the priests during times of persecution. It led to a network of tunnels that ran beneath the city, eventually emerging near the old docks. I know a way, I said, my voice trembling. But it's dangerous. Very dangerous. Elias looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. We have no choice, Aurora. We have to try. He took my hand again and we set off, deeper into the labyrinth. The passage became narrower, the air thicker and more oppressive. We had to crawl on our hands and knees, our clothes snagging on the rough stone. Finally we reached it. The entrance to the hidden passage beneath the altar. It was concealed behind a loose stone, almost invisible to the naked eye. Elias pried the stone loose, revealing a dark, gaping hole. He peered inside, his face grim. After you, he said, gesturing for me to go first. I hesitated. I had never been down here before. I had only heard stories, whispers of a forgotten world beneath the city. But I knew we had no choice. I took a deep breath and plunged into the darkness. The passage was narrow and claustrophobic, barely wide enough for me to squeeze through. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something ancient and unsettling. I crawled forward, my hands scraping against the rough stone. I could hear the faint sound of dripping water, the scurrying of unseen creatures. Suddenly I heard a shout behind me. The soldiers had found us again. They were closing in. Aurora, go! Elias yelled, his voice echoing through the passage. I'll hold them off. No, Elias, I cried, turning back to him. We have to stay together. There's no time, he shouted. Take the cranarium and get out of here. You have to protect it. He pushed the box into my hands, his fingers brushing against mine. His touch was warm, familiar, a beacon in the darkness. I love you, Aurora, he whispered, his eyes filled with a love that transcended fear and danger. Then he turned and faced the soldiers, drawing his pistol. The sound of gunfire echoed through the passage, deafening and terrifying. I stood there, frozen, the cranarium clutched tightly in my hands. I wanted to go back to help Elias, but I knew I couldn't. He was right. I had to protect the cranarium. It was the only way to honor his sacrifice. Tears streamed down my face as I turned and crawled deeper into the darkness. The sound of gunfire faded behind me, replaced by the silence of the tomb. I don't know how long I crawled, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, I saw a faint glimmer of light ahead. I crawled towards it, my body aching, my heart broken. I emerged into a small, abandoned warehouse near the docks. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the empty streets. I stumbled out of the warehouse, my clothes torn and dirty, my face streaked with tears. I looked back at the warehouse, at the dark hole that led back to the tomb where Elias had made his stand. He was gone. My Elias, my love, my everything. He was gone and I was alone. I sank to my knees, the cranarium still clutched tightly in my hands. I wanted to scream, to rage, to tear the world apart. But I couldn't. I had a mission. I had a responsibility. I had to protect the cranarium, to honor Elias's sacrifice. I stood up, my legs trembling, my heart heavy. I looked out at the city, at the rising sun. It was a new day, but for me the world had changed forever. That night I found a small, secluded room in an abandoned building. The only light came from a flickering candle. I opened the cranarium. It was more intricate up close. I felt a faint vibration when my fingers brushed the metallic surface. That night, I began writing in this diary. It was the only way I could make sense of what happened. The only way I could keep Elias alive. In my heart and in my words. I wrote about our childhood, about our dreams, about our love. I wrote about the war, about the Nazis, about the cranarium. I wrote about Elias's sacrifice, about the pain of losing him, about the burden I now carried. Writing became my solace, my therapy, my lifeline. It was the only way I could cope with the grief, the fear, the uncertainty. It was the only way I could keep going. I knew that my life would never be the same. I was no longer just Aurora. I was Aurora, the keeper of the cranarium, the protector of a secret that could change the course of history. And I knew that I would do whatever it took to honor Elias's sacrifice, to protect the cranarium, and to fight for a better world. His love gave me strength. His sacrifice gave me purpose. And his memory would guide me every step of the way. That empty chair, you see, wasn't just about grief. It was about remembering. About honoring a love so fierce it burned brighter than any war. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope, sacrifice, and love can still prevail. And it was a promise whispered across the years that Elias would never be forgotten. He lived on in the cranarium in my heart, and in every word I wrote. And he lived on, too, in the woman I became. A woman forged in fire, tempered by loss, and driven by a love that defied even death itself. The labyrinth spat me out. Not gently, not with any sense of completion. Just ejection. One moment, the clammy stone pressing against my cheek as I cradled Elias's head. The next, stumbling into the familiar chill of the night air outside the forgotten entrance. My breath hitched, a ragged, useless thing. My shoes scraped on the loose gravel of the overgrown path as I walked. Or rather lurched. Home. It was still dark when I reached it. I let myself in, the click of the lock echoing too loudly in the silent house. I didn't turn on the lights. Didn't want to see myself. Didn't want to see the emptiness that had taken root in the corners of every room. The emptiness that now lived inside me. I went straight to my room, the artifact heavy in my pocket. A cold, hard promise. I didn't dare take it out. Not yet. I changed out of my torn clothes, the fabric stiff with dirt, and something else. Something I didn't want to name. I balled them up and shoved them into the bottom of the closet, as if I could bury the memory along with them. Sleep didn't come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing down on me, thick and suffocating. Elias's absence was a physical ache, a gaping hole in the world where he used to be. I could almost hear his laugh, feel the warmth of his hand in mine. Almost. But not quite. The diary. It lay on the nightstand untouched since everything changed. I reached for it, my fingers trembling. The leather felt cold, unfamiliar. I opened it, the blank pages mocking me with their emptiness. I picked up a pen, the ink bleeding slightly as I pressed it to the page. What could I write? How could I possibly capture the enormity of what had happened? The words came slowly, haltingly, like pulling teeth. Broken sentences, fragments of memories, raw, unfiltered grief. He's gone. The labyrinth, it took him, I couldn't save him. The tears came then, hot and stinging, blurring the ink. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the pages were soaked with my sorrow. Then I closed the diary, the clasp clicking shut like a final desperate plea. The next few days were a blur. The official story was simple. Elias had died in an accident. A tragic mishap during a research expedition. No mention of labyrinths, of artifacts, of sacrifices. Just a sanitized, palatable version of the truth. My family grieved. They held me, offered condolences, whispered words of comfort. But they didn't understand. They couldn't understand. They saw my sorrow, but not the darkness that lurked beneath it. The rage, the guilt, the bone-deep weariness. I played the part of the grieving granddaughter. I wore black, I spoke in hushed tones, I forced a smile when necessary. But inside I was screaming. Inside I was falling apart. The artifact. It weighed on me, a constant reminder of my failure. I kept it hidden, buried deep in my dresser drawer, wrapped in a piece of old cloth. I could feel its presence, a cold, humming energy that permeated the room. I started seeing things. Shadows in the corners of my eyes, whispers in the wind. I questioned every face, every gesture. Trust became a luxury I could no longer afford. The world felt different, tainted, dangerous. I avoided mirrors. I couldn't bear to look at myself, to see the hollow-eyed stranger staring back. I flinched at the sound of my name as if it were a curse. Food tasted like ash. Sleep offered no respite. One evening, I found myself drawn to Elias's old room. It had been left untouched since he'd left. A shrine to a life cut short. His books still lined the shelves, his maps still hung on the walls, his notes still lay scattered across his desk. I ran my fingers over the spines of his books, the familiar titles bringing a fresh wave of grief. He had loved these stories, these myths, these legends. He had believed in them. I sat down at his desk, the chair creaking beneath my weight. His notes were a jumble of cryptic symbols, fragmented sentences, and hand-drawn diagrams. I didn't understand most of it, but I recognized a pattern, a thread that ran through all his research. He had been searching for something. Something more than just an artifact. Something bigger. And then I saw it. A small leather-bound notebook tucked away in the corner of his desk. It was old, the pages yellowed and brittle. I opened it carefully, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a journal. Not a personal diary like mine, but a record of his research. He had documented his findings, his theories, his hopes, and his fears. I started reading, my eyes scanning the pages, absorbing every word. He wrote about the labyrinth, about the artifact, about the ancient civilization that had created them. He wrote about their power, their knowledge, and their ultimate demise. And then I found it. A coded entry hidden in plain sight. A series of numbers and symbols that seemed nonsensical at first glance. But then I remembered something he had told me. A story about a secret code used by ancient scholars. I spent hours deciphering the code, my mind racing, my fingers trembling. And then finally I cracked it. The entry revealed the location of another artifact, hidden somewhere in the city. An artifact that Elias believed held the key to understanding the labyrinth's true purpose. Purpose. He had died searching for a purpose. And now it was up to me to find it. The grief was still there. A constant ache in my heart. But something else had taken root, a small flickering flame of resolve. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even hope. It was something more primal, more fundamental. A need to honor his memory, to finish what he had started. I closed the journal, the weight of it heavy in my hands. I knew what I had to do. I had to continue his research. I had to find the other artifact. I had to unravel the secrets of the labyrinth. I started small. I visited the local library, spending hours in the dusty archives, poring over old maps and historical documents. I snuck into Elias's room whenever I could, searching for clues, piecing together his research. I was still grieving, still struggling to cope with the loss. But I was no longer adrift. I had a purpose, a direction, a reason to keep going. Grandma kept feeding the empty chair. First we thought it was grief, that she was just lost in her memories, picturing Grandpa sitting there as he always had. We'd seen it before, the way she'd set a place for him at the table, even years after he was gone. It was a comfort, a way to keep him alive in her heart. But this was different. This wasn't about Grandpa. This was about Elias. And we were wrong. So very wrong. It wasn't grief. It was expectation. She wasn't feeding a memory. She was feeding something else entirely. Something she believed would eventually fill that empty chair. Something that was coming. Grandma Aurora's voice, Willow Creek. It held the ghosts of too many yesterdays. The scent of lilacs in the spring would forever remind me of Elias, of his laughter echoing in the fields, of the stolen kisses beneath the old oak tree. Staying there, surrounded by those memories, felt like being slowly choked by the past. So I did what I had to do. I left. It wasn't a grand escape, no dramatic farewells. Just a quiet morning, the dew still clinging to the grass, the sky painted in soft hues of pink and gray. I packed a small bag, mostly Elias's diary and notes, a few of Mama's things, and the artifact carefully wrapped in layers of cotton and tucked deep inside. A one-way train ticket to the city. A city I'd never seen, a city where no one knew my name, a city where I could simply disappear. The city was a beast, a roaring, breathing thing of brick and steel. Willow Creek had been a lullaby. This was a symphony of clanging trams, hawkers' cries, and the constant hum of 1,000 unseen lives. I found a room in a boarding house on the edge of town, a small cramped space with a view of a brick wall and the constant rumble of the elevated train. It was a far cry from the farmhouse, but it was safe. And safety was all that mattered now. The first few weeks were a blur of loneliness and overwhelming information. Elias's diary was my lifeline, his words a guiding hand in the darkness. He had been a meticulous scholar, a man who loved knowledge for its own sake. His notes were filled with cryptic references, complex diagrams, and fragments of languages I didn't even recognize. I spent my days in the city library, surrounded by towering shelves of books. I devoured everything I could find on cryptography, ancient languages, history, and even mathematics. The librarians, bless their hearts, probably thought I was mad. a young woman with haunted eyes burying herself in dusty tomes. But they were kind, always willing to point me in the right direction, to help me decipher a difficult passage. The artifact, it was more than just an encryption device. As I delved deeper into Elias's research, I began to understand its true potential. It was a key to unlocking secrets, to deciphering patterns, to understanding the very language of intelligence. It could sift through mountains of data, identify hidden connections, and even predict enemy movements. It was a powerful weapon, and I, a simple farm girl, was now its keeper. Learning how to wield that weapon was a daunting task. I started with the basics, learning to decode simple ciphers, to recognize common codes. I practiced observation, sitting in cafes, watching people, trying to decipher their conversations, their gestures, their hidden agendas. I learned to blend in, to become invisible, to move through the city unnoticed. I even started to frequent the local market, not just to buy groceries, but to listen. To listen to the whispers, the rumors, the snippets of information that floated through the air like dandelion seeds. I learned to distinguish truth from propaganda, fact from fiction. I learned to trust my instincts, that quiet voice inside that whispered warnings and pointed me in the right direction. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt overwhelmed, when the weight of the world seemed to rest on my shoulders. The loneliness was a constant companion, a hollow ache in my chest. I missed Elias terribly, his warmth, his laughter, his unwavering belief in me. I missed Mama, her gentle hands, her comforting presence. I missed the simple life, the familiar routines, the feeling of belonging. But I couldn't give up. I couldn't let their sacrifices be in vain. I had to protect the artifact, to use its power for good, to honor their memory. So I pushed on, fueled by grief, by anger, by a growing sense of purpose. One evening, as I was leaving the library, I noticed a man watching me. He was standing across the street, leaning against a lamppost, his face obscured by the shadows. He wore a dark coat and a fedora, and there was something about his posture, the way he held himself, that sent a shiver down my spine. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. I ducked into a crowded streetcar, pressing myself against the other passengers, trying to disappear. When I dared to glance back, he was gone. But I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that he would be back. They were still looking for the artifact. The Nazis hadn't forgotten. They wouldn't stop until they had it in their grasp. And I was the only thing standing in their way. That night I barely slept. I lay in bed, listening to the sounds of the city, the distant sirens, the rumble of the trains. I knew I couldn't stay in the boarding house. I had to move, to find a safer place, a place where I could disappear completely. The next morning I packed my things again, this time with a greater sense of urgency. I found a room in a different part of the city, a small apartment above a bakery. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, a small comfort in a world of uncertainty. I continued my studies, my training, my preparation. I learned to pick locks, to use disguises, to create false identities. I became a chameleon, blending into any environment, adapting to any situation. I even started to use the artifact to gather information. I intercepted coded messages, deciphered enemy plans, and passed the information along to the resistance. I became a shadow, a silent guardian, working in the darkness to protect the light. It was a dangerous game, a constant dance with death. But I was no longer the frightened girl who had left Willow Creek. I was stronger now, more resilient, more determined. I had learned to survive, to adapt, to fight. And I would do whatever it took to protect the artifact, to honor Elias's legacy, to keep the darkness at bay. The loneliness was still there, a constant ache in my heart. But it was tempered by a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. I was no longer just Aurora, the grieving young woman. I was something more. I was a guardian, a protector, a warrior, and I would not falter. One day, while working late in my apartment, I noticed a pattern in the intercepted messages. A pattern that pointed to a specific location, a hidden facility somewhere in the city. A facility where the Nazis were developing a new weapon, a weapon that could change the course of the war. I knew I had to stop them. I couldn't let them unleash this weapon on the world. But I also knew that I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. And so, I began to seek out others, those who shared my ideals, those who were willing to fight for freedom. I found them in the shadows, in the back alleys, in the hidden corners of the city. They were a motley crew, a ragtag group of rebels, but they were brave, resourceful, and fiercely loyal. Together, we planned an attack on the facility. It was a risky operation fraught with danger, but we were determined to succeed. We had to. The fate of the world depended on it. The night of the attack was dark and stormy. The rain lashed against the windows, and the wind howled through the streets. We moved silently like shadows, infiltrating the facility under the cover of darkness. The guards were heavily armed, but we were prepared. We fought with courage and determination, using our skills and knowledge to outwit and outmaneuver them. The battle was fierce and brutal. Many of us were wounded, some even killed. But we pressed on, driven by our unwavering belief in freedom. Finally, after hours of fighting, we reached the heart of the facility. We found the weapon, a terrifying device that could unleash unimaginable destruction. We disabled the weapon, preventing it from being used. We destroyed the facility, erasing all traces of its existence. We had won. But the war was far from over. The Nazis were still out there, still searching for the artifact. And I knew that I would have to continue to fight, to protect, to defend. But I was no longer alone. I had found my purpose, my family, my strength. And I would never give up. That night, as I lay in bed, exhausted but triumphant, I thought of Elias, of Mama, of all those who had sacrificed so much for freedom. I knew that they would be proud of me. And I knew that I would continue to honor their memory, to fight for a better world, until my very last breath. The artifact was safe for now. And so was I. I had learned to survive in the shadows, to find strength in adversity, to become the woman I was meant to be. The little farm girl from Willow Creek was gone, replaced by a warrior, a guardian, a protector. And I was ready for whatever the future held. The war, that monstrous, insatiable beast, finally began to choke on its own greed. Aurora, my grandmother, though she never spoke of it directly, carried the echoes of its death throes in the quiet lines around her eyes. I only understood the true weight of those lines years later, after finding her diary and slowly piecing together the puzzle of her past. The artifact, that intricate music box Elias had crafted, became her lifeline, her clandestine telephone to the Allied forces. She learned to coax secrets from its delicate mechanisms, translating the enemy's coded messages into actionable intelligence. Each day was a tightrope walk, a dance with danger. She would sit by the window, ostensibly mending clothes or tending to her herbs, her hands moving with practiced ease while her mind raced, decoding, transmitting, anticipating. The village, once a haven, now felt like a cage, every friendly face potentially a disguised enemy. I remember as a child, seeing her stand a little straighter whenever the news crackled from the radio, reporting Allied victories. She never celebrated openly, never betrayed the slightest hint of her involvement. But I saw it in the subtle lift of her chin, the almost imperceptible softening of her gaze. Those small moments, I realize now, were her silent victories, the fruits of her courage and sacrifice. She was a silent guardian, a hidden force for good, and the music box, her constant companion, hummed with the weight of its secrets. There was a particular incident she alluded to in the diary, a mission involving a planned ambush on Allied troops. The details were sparse, carefully veiled, but I gathered that Aurora had intercepted the enemy's plans and, through the music box, relayed the information just in time. The ambush was thwarted and countless lives were saved. She wrote of the crushing responsibility she felt, the knowledge that her actions had directly influenced the course of the war. It was a burden that aged her beyond her years, but it was also a source of profound purpose. Then finally the news arrived. The armistice. Silence fell, a profound and absolute silence, replacing the constant drone of war reports and anxious whispers. The bells of the village church rang out, their joyous peals echoing across the valley. People poured into the streets, embracing, weeping, celebrating the end of the nightmare. I remember clinging to Aurora's hand, bewildered by the sudden shift in atmosphere. She didn't join the throng of celebrants. Instead, she stood on the porch, her face etched with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of pure joy, I realized later. It was a tear for Elias, for the lives lost, for the years stolen by the war. It was a tear for the young woman she once was, a woman who had been forced to grow up too quickly, to shoulder burdens no one should ever have to bear. The war was over, but its scars remained, etched on the landscape and in the hearts of those who had lived through it. Aurora, however, refused to be defined by the trauma. She chose to heal, to rebuild, to dedicate her life to making the world a little brighter. She didn't stay in the village. The memories there were too potent, too intertwined with loss and danger. Instead, she returned to Willow Creek, the place of her childhood, a haven of quiet beauty. There she bought a small cottage with a sprawling garden, a place where she could nurture life and find solace in the rhythm of the seasons. She poured her energy into the community, volunteering at the local school, teaching children to read and write. She established a small lending library, filling it with books that offered solace, inspiration, and a window into different worlds. She tended to her garden, growing herbs and vegetables that she shared with her neighbors. She became a source of quiet strength and unwavering compassion, a beacon of hope in a world still reeling from the devastation of war. The music box, Elias's gift, held a place of honor in her new home. She kept it inside a larger, hand-carved wooden box, lined with velvet. It wasn't used for espionage anymore. It was a relic, a tangible reminder of her love for Elias, of her courage, of her sacrifice. Sometimes, when she was alone, she would wind it up and listen to its delicate melody, letting the music transport her back to a time of both immense joy and unbearable pain. It was a way of keeping Elias's memory alive, of honoring the love that had sustained her through the darkest of times. I remember visiting her in Willow Creek as a young girl. She always had time for me, always had a story to tell, a lesson to impart. She taught me the names of the wildflowers, the secrets of the stars, the importance of kindness and compassion. She never spoke of the war, never revealed the extraordinary role she had played in its outcome. But I sensed even then that there was something extraordinary about her, a depth of wisdom and resilience that set her apart. She was a constant presence in my life, a source of unwavering love and support. She taught me to knit, to bake, to appreciate the simple beauty of the world around me. She was my confidant, my mentor, my friend, and she was, above all else, my grandmother. It wasn't until after her death, when I discovered her diary, that I truly understood the magnitude of her sacrifice, the depth of her courage, the extraordinary life she had lived. The diary revealed a woman I had only glimpsed in fragments, a woman who had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Now, looking back, I understand why she always kept that chair empty at the dinner table. It wasn't just grief for Elias, though that was certainly a part of it. It was a reminder of all those who were lost, all those who had sacrificed their lives for the sake of freedom. It was a silent tribute to the invisible heroes of the war, the ones who had fought in the shadows, the ones whose stories would never be told. Grandma Aurora. She was more than just a grandmother. She was a warrior, a survivor, a healer, a beacon of hope. And her legacy, etched in the pages of her diary and embodied in the delicate melody of the music box, will continue to inspire me for the rest of my life. The empty chair, I realize now, was not a symbol of loss, but a symbol of remembrance, of gratitude, and of the enduring power of love. It was a place for Elias, yes, but also for all those who had given everything for a better world. A world that Aurora had helped to create. And in remembering them, we honor their sacrifice and ensure that their stories will never be forgotten. The diary rested on my lap, its aged leather warm beneath my fingertips. The afternoon light, softened by the lace curtains, painted the room in hues of gold and amber, mirroring the emotions swirling within me. For weeks I had been immersed in Aurora's world, a world I thought I knew, but now understood as a landscape far more intricate and profound than I could have ever imagined. The empty chair. It wasn't grief that fueled her ritual, I knew that now. It was expectation, hope, a persistent echo of a love that transcended even death. She was feeding someone only she could see, someone who existed beyond the veil, someone whose presence she felt with an unwavering certainty. I closed the diary, the silence in the room amplifying the echoes of Aurora's voice in my mind. The simple act of reading her words had unlocked a chamber within my own heart, a chamber filled with a newfound appreciation for the woman who had shaped my childhood. The fairy tales she told, the seemingly whimsical stories of brave princesses and cunning woodsmen, weren't just bedtime distractions. They were parables, veiled lessons drawn from the wellspring of her own life, her own battles fought in the shadows. The princess imprisoned in the tower, longing for freedom, was Aurora herself, trapped by circumstance, by societal expectations, by a war that stole more than just lives. And the cunning woodsman? Perhaps a metaphor for the resilience she found within herself, the unwavering spirit that allowed her to navigate the treacherous forest of her reality. I remembered one story in particular, a tale of a little bird with a broken wing who learned to fly again with the help of a kind old woman. As a child, I'd seen it as a simple story of healing and perseverance. Now I recognized it as a reflection of Aurora's own brokenness, her own healing, and the quiet strength she found in acts of kindness, both given and received. The old woman, of course, was her mother, a figure only ever spoken of in hushed tones, a woman who had instilled in Aurora the very essence of her being, a fierce love and an unyielding belief in the power of hope. Aurora's legacy wasn't just about the secrets she kept, the coded messages in her diary, or the hidden artifacts scattered throughout the house. It was about the quiet strength she radiated, the wisdom she imparted through stories, the unconditional love she showered upon me, even when I was too young to fully comprehend its depth. It was about the way she made me feel seen, understood, and cherished, even in my most vulnerable moments. Her legacy was woven into the fabric of my being, a vibrant thread connecting me to generations past and future. The diary was more than just a historical document. It was a map to Aurora's soul. It revealed the complexities of her character, the hidden depths beneath her gentle exterior. It showed me that even the most ordinary lives can be extraordinary, filled with moments of courage, sacrifice, and unwavering love. And it taught me that the stories we tell, the stories we keep alive, are the most powerful legacy we can leave behind. I thought of the empty chair again, the one she meticulously set a place for, year after year. It wasn't a symbol of grief, but an affirmation of love's enduring power. It was a testament to her belief that those we love never truly leave us, that their spirits linger, offering comfort and guidance, if only we are open to receiving it. The chair wasn't empty to her. It was occupied by the ghost of a love that time and distance could not diminish. Looking back, I realized how much of Aurora's life had been shaped by the war, a conflict that had cast a long shadow over her generation. It had stolen her youth, her innocence, and the man she loved, but it had also forged in her a resilience that I now recognized as her defining characteristic. She had refused to be defined by her losses, choosing instead to focus on the love that remained, the hope that flickered even in the darkest of times. I thought of my own challenges, the obstacles I had faced in my own life, the moments when I had felt lost and overwhelmed. And I realized that Aurora's story was a source of strength, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to find hope, to find love, to find meaning. Her life was a testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience, a beacon of light guiding me through my own personal storms. The diary was a gift, a treasure trove of wisdom and insight that I would cherish for the rest of my life. It was a reminder of the importance of honoring our past, of learning from our mistakes, and of embracing the richness and complexity of the human experience. It was a reminder that we are all connected, that our lives are intertwined, and that the choices we make have a ripple effect that extends far beyond our own individual existence. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, I opened the diary one last time. I turned to a page filled with Aurora's elegant handwriting, a passage that had resonated with me from the moment I first read it. The greatest stories are not always the ones that are written down, she had written, but the ones that are lived. Those words echoed in my heart, affirming my newfound understanding of Aurora's life and legacy. Her story wasn't just about the events that had shaped her life, but about the way she had lived it, the love she had given, the wisdom she had shared, and the courage she had displayed in the face of adversity. I closed the diary, a sense of peace settling over me. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced by a feeling of profound gratitude and appreciation. I understood now. The empty chair wasn't a symbol of loss, but a symbol of enduring love, a testament to the invisible bonds that connect us to those we have lost. It was a reminder that their spirits live on, offering comfort and guidance, if only we are open to receiving it. Aurora's legacy would live on, not just in the diary, but in the stories I would tell, in the lessons I would pass on to future generations. Her life was a testament to the power of love, the importance of resilience, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. and I, her granddaughter, would carry her story with me, a beacon of hope guiding me through the challenges of life. The diary would remain a treasured guide, a source of comfort and inspiration, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And I would honor Aurora's memory by living my life with the same courage, compassion, and unwavering love that she had shown me. It was time to uncover and honor our hidden stories, to share them with the world, and to inspire others to do the same. Because in those stories we find not only our past, but also our future. We find the strength to face our challenges, the wisdom to navigate our complexities, and the love to connect with one another in a world that often feels divided. The empty chair would remain, a silent witness to the enduring power of love and the enduring legacy of Aurora, my grandmother, my guide, my inspiration. And I would continue to set a place for her in my heart, knowing that her spirit would always be with me, guiding me, comforting me, and reminding me that even in the face of loss, love endures. And maybe, just maybe, if I listened closely enough, I could hear her whisper stories of princesses and woodsmen, of little birds with broken wings, and of a love that transcended even death. And in those stories I would find the strength to carry on, to live my life to the fullest, and to honor the legacy of the woman who had taught me everything I knew about love, loss, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The diary was closed, but her story, our story, had just begun. The chair remained, no longer empty, but filled with the invisible presence of a love that would last forever. Here it is, the end of Aurora's story, a story woven not just from the threads of her life, but from the very fabric of love, loss, and a courage that bloomed in the most unlikely of gardens. We began with an empty chair, a mystery wrapped in the ritual of daily meals, a puzzle that seemed, at first glance, to be nothing more than the sad echo of grief. But Aurora, my dear ones, was never one for simple sadness. Her grief was a garden, overgrown perhaps, but fertile with secrets, with memories that needed tending, and with a love that refused to be confined by the boundaries of absence. The empty chair, you see, wasn't just a reminder of who was gone. It was a testament to who remained, to the enduring power of connection, to the invisible threads that bind us to those we love, even when they are no longer physically present. It was a symbol of her steadfast refusal to let the past wither and die. Instead, she nourished it, she spoke to it, she shared her life with it, not because she was lost in delusion, but because she understood a truth that many of us forget, that love transcends the limitations of time and space. And the diary, that unassuming little book held the key, didn't it? It was the map to Aurora's hidden world, a world filled with wartime secrets, with daring acts of defiance, with a love story that defied expectations and blossomed in the face of unimaginable hardship. It revealed a woman far more complex, far more resilient, far more extraordinary than any of us could have imagined. It showed us that even the quietest lives can hold the most profound stories, the most breathtaking acts of bravery. Aurora's silence, her quiet dedication to the empty chair, wasn't an act of madness, but an act of devotion. She wasn't merely feeding an absence. She was feeding a memory, a promise, a love that continued to sustain her, even after decades of separation. She was keeping a flame alive, a flame that illuminated not only her own life, but also the lives of those she touched. If Aurora's story has resonated within you, if it has stirred something in your heart, then it has achieved its purpose. Stories, like seeds, need fertile ground to take root and grow. They need listeners, they need sharers, they need hearts open to their message. Aurora's story, now shared with you, becomes a part of your story, a part of your understanding of love, loss, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Think about it. How many times have you dismissed someone as ordinary, as unremarkable, without truly knowing the depths of their experience, the secrets they hold within? How many times have you failed to see the quiet heroism that exists all around us, in the everyday acts of kindness, in the unwavering devotion to loved ones, in the silent battles fought behind closed doors? Aurora's life was a testament to the power of resilience. She faced unimaginable challenges, she endured heartbreaking losses, but she never allowed herself to be defined by her pain. She chose instead to focus on the love that remained, on the memories that sustained her, on the promise of a future, however uncertain it may have seemed. She found strength in the quiet moments, in the simple rituals, in the unwavering belief that love, in all its forms, is the most powerful force in the universe. And that, my dear ones, is the legacy she leaves behind. A legacy of courage, a legacy of love, a legacy of quiet strength. A reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can still bloom, that even in the face of unimaginable loss, love can still endure. Aurora taught me, and I hope she has taught you, that every life is a story worth telling, that every heart holds a secret worth uncovering, that every act of kindness, no matter how small, can make a world of difference. She reminded me that the past is not something to be feared, but something to be cherished, something to be learned from, something to be shared with those we love. The empty chair now no longer represents absence but presence. It represents the enduring power of love, the unwavering strength of the human spirit, the belief that even in death, connection can still exist. It represents Aurora's legacy, a legacy that will continue to inspire and uplift us for generations to come. And so, we come to the end of this chapter but not to the end of the story. Because stories, like memories, live on in the hearts of those who hear them. They are passed down from generation to generation, whispered from ear to ear, shared around campfires and dinner tables. They become a part of who we are, shaping our beliefs, influencing our actions, and reminding us of the enduring power of the human spirit. If Aurora's story has touched your heart, if it has made you think differently about love, loss, and the hidden depths of the human experience, then please leave a like. Let us know that her story has resonated with you, that her legacy will continue to live on. And if you are eager to hear more tales of courage, resilience, and the enduring power of love, then please subscribe to our channel. We have many more stories to share, stories that will inspire you, stories that will challenge you, stories that will remind you of the beauty and complexity of the human experience. Because every life, my dear ones, is a story worth telling. Every heart holds a secret worth uncovering. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can make a world of difference. And now, I leave you with a question that I have pondered myself many times over the years. What secret do you believe Grandma Aurora held closest to her heart? Was it the memory of her lost love? Was it the thrill of her wartime adventures? Or was it simply the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had lived a life filled with courage, love, and unwavering devotion to those she held dear? Share your thoughts below. Let us know what you think, what you feel, what you have learned from Aurora's story. Let us create a community of storytellers, a community of listeners, a community of hearts open to the beauty and complexity of the human experience. Because stories like love are meant to be shared. They are meant to connect us, to inspire us, to remind us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves. They are meant to keep the flame alive, the flame of hope, the flame of love, the flame of the human spirit. And so, until next time, may your days be filled with courage, love, and the unwavering belief in the power of your own story. May you find strength in the quiet moments, in the simple rituals, in the unwavering belief that love, in all its forms, is the most powerful force in the universe. And may Aurora's legacy continue to inspire and uplift us for generations to come. Remember her empty chair, not as a symbol of loss, but as a symbol of enduring love, of unwavering devotion, of the belief that even in death, connection can still exist. Remember Aurora and remember her story, and share it with those you love. Because stories, like seeds, need fertile ground to take root and grow. They need listeners, they need sharers, they need hearts open to their message. Thank you for listening. And until next time, may your lives be filled with stories worth telling.